Welcome, soul driven writers, to the Soul Writer Podcast. This podcast is designed for writers like you who have a burning desire to share their story and message with the world and make the biggest impact possible. I'm your host, Lauren Eckhart, bestselling author, ghostwriter, book coach, and the CEO of Burning Soul Collective. Here at the Soul Writer Podcast, we believe in the power of vulnerability and authenticity. Our mission is to inspire and empower you to write from the depths of your soul by showcasing other authors who have done exactly that. Through their journeys, you'll discover what it takes to write a book that truly resonates with readers and learn how you can embrace your own unique voice to live the writer's life that you've always imagined. So, gather your favorite writing tools, cozy up in your favorite spot, and let's explore the world of soul-driven writing together. This is the Soul Writer Podcast, where your passion meets purpose and the world awaits the magic that only you can create. Welcome to the journey. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Soul Writer Podcast. I am thrilled that you are with me today. We are going to dive in a little deeper to some of the topics that I discussed with Nita Kennedy in the last episode of the Soul Writer podcast. So if you haven't listened to that interview with her yet, always go back and listen to them because I tell you, these authors that we're interviewing, they just have so many great nuggets of wisdom to share with you all. So make sure you go back and listen to the one with Nita. So, a couple of the things that Nita and I had talked about in her episode was her unique writing method, how she ended up really choosing a target audience and honing in on that target audience, and then also really how it worked out with having her family read her story, and how long it took for her kids to finally read her life story and what that means, and just some of the thoughts that I had around it. So, let's go ahead and first kick off with the writing method. Now, in an earlier episode, when we were talking about writer's block, I believe in episode number 3, we were looking at, things like really having a space dedicated to writing, knowing and believing that when you sit down in the space, it's like protected space. It's protected for your thoughts, your ideas. It's like your safe space to let everything flow from within to outside, really just like giving it that identity. So, something I want to say with that is that as you're writing, especially if you're writing multiple books or if you're writing over a long period of time, sometimes you end up getting a little stalled creatively when you're showing up at the same place time and time again. As I always stress, we all operate in different ways. So it really takes knowing us and what's happening within us. But for me, for example, I'm not so much a creature of habit, whereas some people really feed off having their daily rituals and are knowing what to expect day in and day out and having that space that they show up for all the time. For me, I need a little variety in it. So when I find that I'm going back to my normal writing space and I'm not feeling inspired, I'm just kind of feeling stuck, that tells me that I need to mix it up. I need to go to a coffee shop. I need to work outside if the weather is nice. I need to sometimes, this sounds crazy, but sometimes I will sit on the floor and my couch that I have in the office is at a really good level where I can sit on the floor, use that couch as like my desk, and I'm just kind of leaning against the couch, writing that way. There is something about being on the ground versus just sitting in a chair away from it that it's almost like it helps ground me, and it gives me this, like, really safe, secure place to write in. So, when I find myself stuck, sometimes I'll just pick up my laptop and I'll go write somewhere else. Now, I bring all of this up because Nita has been one of our most unique first draft writers in the sense that she wrote her entire first draft of her book in a journal, which she still, if you listen to the interview, she mentioned she still carries around with her. I love that. And when we were talking about it, I think was just in one of our normal conversations. I don't think this was brought up on the podcast interview with her, but I'll never forget. She said the reason why is because when I'm writing in my journal, it's like anything inside of me will automatically flow out onto the pages. It just feels more authentic. It feels more genuine. And that's so important, especially when you are writing a story that is near and dear to your heart, something that means a lot to you. If you find that you are sitting down at the computer and just nothing is coming out, try switching up how you're going about writing. Maybe it will work better for you to write in a notebook, to write in a journal. So those are things that are always worth exploring so you can figure out what works best for you. And really, it is that intimacy level. Like, where do you feel like you connect with those pages the best? I always wish that I could write in a notebook. Like, I love the idea of writing by hand, and it's convenient. But my brain doesn't work that way. It's like I can't keep my hand I can't have my hand catch up with the thoughts that are in my head. So I'm a really fast typer, so it just works to type for me. Really, really wish that I could do the notebook or journal thing. And I'm really inspired by people who do. I also know people who, for them, it's sitting down with a classic typewriter and writing that way. I would make way too many errors on a typewriter. I just could see it already. I would get very frustrated. But I love just that classic element of it, and just kind of the vibe. I mean, I love typewriters. I love being around typewriters, but I don't think I could actually write. But for some people, they could. So my whole point is to experiment with what works best for you. The other thing I want to stress with that, because I bring this up with my clients all the time, and they find themselves being surprised that a method that had worked for them so consistently suddenly doesn't. Y'all, we go through seasons, okay? We, as people, we're reflective of nature. Nature goes through seasons, we go through seasons. And as you start to write more and more and more, it's really important to listen to how your body, your mind, your creativity is responding or feeling blocked in those seasons. So, for example, for me, I kind of write across the board with fiction and nonfiction. I find myself, even with like my choices of reading, I always call myself a mood reader because what I want to read is based off of my mood. Um, Coming into fall, wintertime, I start craving more of the romance, the sweeter stories, the stories that allow me to escape a little bit more and go into a different world. Those are the ones that I want to read, and those are the ones that I want to write. And so when it comes to nonfiction projects, I find myself struggling because that's not where my mind wants to be. It does not want to be in reality, it wants to be somewhere else. So I have to honor that. And I know that now. I know to expect that come every fall, winter time. I try not to schedule any ghostwriting projects, nonfiction ghostwriting projects for that exact reason. And I try to schedule out my own writing to make sure that during that time I'm writing more women's fiction or romance or dystopian, even just something that makes me feel like I'm in a totally different world. The other part with that is we also have seasons throughout the month or seasons throughout the week. Pay attention to those patterns that naturally come up for you. Okay, that's really, really important. And the more that you start paying attention to those and honoring that, the more you'll be prepared when those seasons roll around or start to change. And you're like, okay, that's fine. I just need to pivot slightly. But again, it's about you, and we all operate so differently, but that awareness is key in realizing that a lot of times it's just really minor pivots that will help set you back on track to where you need to go. The other thing that Nita and I had talked about was target audience. And what's so important about having a niche audience is that it will help you figure out what to say when you are writing your book. But not only that, you know better how you need to market and the language, the words that you need to use to properly market your book, and also how to evaluate the market to see what other books are exactly like you or like yours. Now, picking a target audience is something that a lot of our authors will struggle with in the beginning because they're like, I don't want to exclude anyone. I want to include everyone. I have people really niche down even more than just a audience, or just an audience. I really have them niche down to a target person. Okay, and there's a reason behind this. When you know exactly who your book is for, and when you have an emotional tie to that target person, it can motivate you to finish your book in those times that it becomes hard to finish your book. And not only that, but it will help you with figuring out what exactly do you need to say to make the impact that you want to make. And how do you deliver that message in a way that that target person would be able to receive it? That is a big game changer for many of my clients. So I'm like, just choose one, just focus on that one target person that you have an emotional connection to. Maybe it's a son or daughter of yours. Maybe it's your mom or dad. Maybe it's the old you from 20 years ago. Maybe it's one of your best friends or a coworker or the daughter of a coworker. Who is this book for? If you had to pick one person in the world to dedicate it to, that you would want to read this book above all else. And then you want to dive into, why do you want this person to read your book? How could this book help them? Where are they at the beginning of reading this book, and where do you want to be able to take them? That's something I always say is a from island A to island B. You are taking this person to from wherever they are in their current state on island A and guiding them to island B, which you hope will provide them with XYZ, whatever it might be. So, when you know exactly who that person is, then from there you can start branching out a little bit more. But in the time of writing specifically, I always say get a picture of whoever that target person is, put it by your desk for inspiration. Let them inspire you to write this book. Let them be that urgent reason to complete your book. And then just know outside of that, you can really branch, you can take who that target person symbolizes on a greater audience level and start to branch out to know more of who your target audience is. And then you can apply that to more of the marketing elements, which we'll do more conversations about in future episodes. But the other thing you have to trust is that it won't be the only people who are reached. It's like what Nita was saying that always moved her is when she would do these speaking engagements and then talk about her book. Even though her book is for women, the number of men who would still read the book and come to her and compliment her on her lessons or then want to buy the book for their sisters, their daughters, their mothers, whoever it might be. You will still inspire people outside of your target audience. You don't have to be concerned about leaving anyone out. You will naturally attract the people that you need to for this book if everything is done correctly from the inside out. The other thing I will say about target audience is that I'll have some clients, I'll be like, okay, who's your target audience? And they'll be like, oh, I don't know. I can't narrow it down. I have like 30 different types of people that this book is for. The problem with that is when you are trying to get clear on your message, the target, the core central theme of this book, a lot of times you'll realize suddenly it'll get muddied when you have like three different people you're trying to reach. Like I had one client who was like, well, this book is for patients at a skilled nursing facility, the families of the patients, and then the workers at the skilled nursing facility. I was like, okay, you cannot write one book that is trying to reach all of those people because your delivery of the message, the things that you talk about, are going to be completely different for every single one of those audience members. And I know you have a heart to help all of those people, but then you write different books that are geared towards each of those audiences. You do not try to cram everything into one book because then the patients are going to be reading things that are better suited for the employees of skilled nursing facilities, and it's not going to apply for them, and your book will not be effective. They will shut down your book. They will not finish reading it because those portions definitely do not apply to them. Pick one audience because your book, the message within is going to be stronger. You are going to be able to help so many more people when you get clear on specifically that target person, and then, of course, be able to branch out to a target audience. Please, please, please don't say that this is not important because it is. It is a game changer for everything that you do with how you write your book, how you market your book. So take the time to figure out who that is for you. And then just know it doesn't mean that you're excluding everyone else from reading it. It's just a very important step to take. One of the, I've done this a few different times, exercises I've done with clients who have struggled with picking their target audience. And this has always been really effective to the point, even emotional for many people. I'll say, okay, if you don't know who your target audience is, think about this. You have 45 minutes left to live, and all you can think about is making the biggest impact that you can possibly make. So you have the opportunity to spend your last 45 minutes speaking in front of a group. In audience A, there's this group. In audience B, there's this group. In audience C, there's this group. So, of course, each audience will be whichever ones you're struggling with. Like, I'll talk about Jennifer Hobbs, who we interviewed in episode 2. When I did this when I did this exercise with her, for her, who she was trying to figure out at the time, our vets was in one group, families of vets was in another. I cannot remember who the third one is, but someone else was in that third group that she was trying to figure out, who do I focus on? Who do I actually help? And when I told her to then close her eyes and just trust, who is that first group that's speaking to you that you're like, if I had 45 minutes left in this world, this is the group that I would want to deliver my final message to. And she just started crying. And this is a typical response to this exercise because people are surprised at who they end up gravitating to. Because we forget that life is fleeting. I know that can be such a morbid way of looking at things, but it's seriously a fact that drives me. I don't think it's morbid. I think it's beautiful to remember that our days here in this world are numbered. Our minutes are numbered. Nothing is a guarantee. So if we're looking at making a big impact, and this book is one of the ways we can do that, what's the audience that we want to have the biggest impact on? Because this book is still going to outlast your life here. So who is the audience that you want to deliver that final message to? That's how you get clear on it. Now, the final thing I want to bring up is how Nita was talking about it took 6 months for her sons or all of her family, all of her kids to finally read her book. I want to talk about this because this is something that can feel very deflating during your launch period, or maybe even earlier if you're, before even publishing, just during writing time, you're trying to share some of your writing with loved ones to get their feedback. Not everyone will be ready or willing to read your book when you want them to. And that's okay. Because, if you listen to Nita's interview, her son needed her message at the time that he ended up finally reading it because of what he was doing in his life at the time. If he had read it 6 months before, it might not have had the same impact. So just like we need to trust that the right people will read our books in the right time, we need to trust the same for our family members. We can't expect loved ones to suddenly just want to go out and read our book. Like I was talking about even earlier, being a mood reader. I know there's just certain times in my life that I want to read certain books and not at other times. And I want to honor that because I don't want to force myself to read a book and then just go about it with the wrong attitude. I don't want people reading my books with the wrong attitude. I want them to actually be excited to read my books. And don't you want that as well? So we have to remember that and not feel deflated, not feel like it's not being supported, not feel like, no one really believes that we can make it as an author because they're not reading our book when we want them to. Or suddenly we think it's terrible because they don't want to read our book. We have to trust that people will read our books in the right time. So just remember that, because navigating family, friends, when you are doing something that feels so incredibly important to you, don't let them steal the wind under your wings, especially because a lot of times it's not even intentional, but it's the way that we perceive the reaction. And so just know this book's message is supposed to reach everyone at the right time, and that includes loved ones as well. Thank you so much for tuning in to another inspiring episode of the Soul Writer Podcast. I hope today's conversation has ignited a newfound passion and determination in you to write from a place of vulnerability, authenticity, and soul. Remember, your story has the power to make a significant impact in the world. And by sharing your unique voice, you're contributing to the tapestry of human experience. So go forth, embrace your soul-driven purpose, and let your words transform the lives of your readers. Be sure to subscribe to the Soul Writer Podcast so you don't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes, where we'll continue to share valuable insights and inspiring stories from fellow authors. You can also join our community on social media to connect with like-minded writers and share your own journey by looking at Burning Soul Collective. Until next time, keep shining your light, and remember, your story matters. Your words have power, and the world needs the magic that only you can create. This is the Soul Writer Podcast, signing off for now. Right on, my friends.